There is a kind of beauty that blossoms after 50 that cannot be reduced to appearances or external validation. It is the beauty of presence, the calm assurance of a woman who no longer feels compelled to compete, convince, or prove her worth. This presence is quiet yet magnetic, drawing attention not through spectacle, but through depth. She walks into a room and does not demand to be noticed, but her serenity naturally shifts the atmosphere. Others sense that she has nothing to prove and everything to embody. This kind of beauty is not fleeting because it is rooted not in surface, but in essence. Carl Jung described individuation as the process of becoming whole, a gradual integration of all the fragmented parts of the self into a unified, authentic being. By midlife, many women have walked far enough in their journeys to embody this wholeness. What once was hidden or denied is now embraced, and the energy once spent chasing approval is reclaimed for presence. Individuation gives rise to a new magnetism, a quiet confidence that speaks louder than performance. This confidence is not loud or restless, but steady, and it radiates a kind of power that can't be faked. The psychological impact of this shift is profound. A woman who no longer chases external affirmation finds herself moving at her own rhythm, free from the pressure of comparison. She does not measure herself against younger women, nor does she seek validation through constant reassurance. Instead, her sense of worth comes from an internal reservoir that has been built over years of self-discovery and resilience. This reservoir allows her to face both joy and difficulty with the same composure. And it is this composure that others find captivating. Her calm becomes contagious, inspiring those around her to settle into themselves as well. In daily life, this quiet confidence appears in ways that are subtle but undeniable. She listens more than she speaks, and her silence communicates attentiveness rather than absence. She chooses her words carefully, and because they are not scattered, they carry weight. A smile from her does not seek approval, it reflects inner peace. Even her physical presence speaks of this transformation. Her posture is upright without arrogance, her gaze steady without confrontation, her movements unhurried yet purposeful. Every gesture reveals someone who is at peace with herself, and that peace radiates outward. Examples of this magnetism can be seen everywhere. A woman at a social gathering who does not compete for attention but is naturally respected. Another in her professional environment who does not raise her voice, yet her calm authority influences decisions more than noise ever could. Another enjoying solitude in a cafe, her presence enough to draw admiration from strangers without a single word spoken. Each of these women embodies the paradox of quiet confidence. The less they seek to impress, the more unforgettable they become. This form of beauty after 50 is not about denying age, but about embodying it fully. Wrinkles, silver hair, and marks of time are not enemies, but symbols of survival and experience. The woman who embraces these signs with dignity communicates a truth that no cosmetic or performance can replicate. She is whole as she is. This authenticity becomes a form of power. It reminds others that true beauty has less to do with youth and more to do with presence, less with appearance and more with alignment. Ultimately, the irresistibility of a woman after 50 lies not in how she looks, but in how she lives. Her quiet confidence is the fruit of years of growth, healing, and self-discovery. She does not beg to be seen because she already sees herself. She does not fight for space because she already occupies her life fully. In a world that glorifies noise and spectacle, her serenity becomes rare and magnetic. It is not that she resists time, it is that she transcends it, and in doing so she reveals a truth Jung himself would affirm. The wholeness of the self is the greatest source of beauty and attraction. The second source of this quiet confidence after 50 is the freedom that emerges when a woman stops living for approval. For much of life, many women are conditioned to measure their worth through the eyes of others, through male desire, social validation, or comparisons with youth. Yet in midlife, this burden begins to dissolve. The constant need to be chosen or praised loses its hold, and in its place arises a new kind of independence. This independence is not harsh or defiant, but liberating. She no longer feels the urgency to please. She feels the relief of simply existing as she is. And this relief itself becomes magnetic. Carl Jung often wrote about the collective shadow, the unconscious beliefs a culture imposes on individuals. For women, one of the most powerful shadows is the association of aging with loss, the loss of beauty, of value, of relevance. This belief has trapped generations into fearing their own reflection. Yet the woman who refuses to carry this shadow begins to break a cycle. She realizes that what she loses in youth, she gains in depth, in clarity, in authenticity. To shed the collective shadow is to reclaim her life from illusion, and this reclamation appears to others as radiant confidence. The paradox is striking. The less she depends on external approval, the more admired she becomes. People are drawn not to her effort, but to her freedom. Men who once expected women to compete for attention find themselves intrigued by one who does not. Women who still live under the weight of comparison look at her with a mixture of surprise and respect. What was once labeled indifference is now recognized as maturity. By no longer begging to be chosen, she reveals that she has already chosen herself. And this self-choice is irresistible. The psychological impact of this liberation is transformative. She stops apologizing for taking up space. She stops justifying her decisions as though her life required external permission. She begins to act not out of fear of rejection, but out of alignment with her truth. This internal shift changes her external presence. She walks differently. She speaks with clarity. She laughs without hesitation. Her joy is not tied to validation, and because of that, it feels more authentic. Others sense that they are in the presence of someone who no longer negotiates her worth. Daily life illustrates this freedom clearly. A woman declines an invitation without guilt, knowing her rest is more valuable than pleasing others. Another lets her hair turn silver naturally and carries it with elegance, rather than hiding behind conformity. Another chooses solitude over a shallow relationship, preferring the richness of her own company to the emptiness of being tolerated. Each of these small acts reveals the same truth. Her life is no longer shaped by fear of disapproval, but by respect for her own soul. This shift can both inspire and intimidate. It inspires those ready to see that aging is not a decline, but a deepening of life. It intimidates those who benefit from women seeking constant approval, because her independence removes their power. Yet neither reaction sways her. She has reached a point where her energy is not scattered outward in search of validation, but concentrated inward, fueling her presence. The result is a woman who stands firm in herself, unshaken by trends, comparisons, or judgments. Ultimately, this freedom to abandon the search for approval is one of the most powerful sources of attraction after 50. It is not rooted in defiance, but in serenity, not in rejection of others, but in acceptance of herself. By breaking with the cultural shadow that equates aging with loss, she transforms age into expansion. The woman who no longer lives for validation reveals a timeless truth. The less she needs to be chosen, the more admired she becomes, not because she chases admiration, but because she embodies authenticity. And authenticity, at any age, is magnetic. One of the most striking elements of quiet confidence after 50 is the ability to set limits with calm clarity. In earlier years, many women confuse boundaries with harshness, believing that saying no will make them unlovable or difficult. But maturity teaches another truth. A boundary spoken softly can carry more strength than 1,000 arguments. The woman who embodies this confidence does not need to raise her voice to be respected. She communicates her dignity through serenity. A clear, "I will not accept this," spoken without anger, can transform the atmosphere of an interaction. It is not aggression that commands respect, but presence rooted in self-assurance. Carl Jung's psychology helps us understand why. He argued that individuation requires integrating both strength and gentleness, firmness and compassion. The woman who has reached this integration no longer feels torn between protecting herself and staying open. She knows that her softness is preserved by her firmness. Her boundaries are not walls, but gates. They allow love to enter while keeping harm at a distance. This balance gives her an aura of authority that feels natural. She does not impose respect, she inspires it. Those who encounter her quickly understand that her limits are sacred, and honoring them is the only way to remain close. The psychological impact of such calm boundaries is liberating. She no longer wastes energy in endless explanations or justifications. She no longer bargains with her dignity, hoping others will one day see her worth. Instead, her boundaries act as a filter. Those who respect them remain. Those who mock them fall away. This process may feel like loss at first, but it is, in truth, purification. She learns that the respect she grants herself attracts authentic connection, while those unwilling to honor it were never meant to stay. In daily life, this confidence shows itself in subtle gestures. She calmly ends conversations when they turn disrespectful. She chooses not to explain her decisions when they are questioned, trusting her own judgment. She declines requests that would drain her energy without guilt or apology. Each of these small acts reinforces her magnetism because they reveal a woman whose self-worth does not depend on compliance. Her quiet refusal speaks louder than defensiveness ever could, and the world takes notice even if it cannot articulate why. This posture aligns with the archetype of the queen. The queen does not plead for recognition or explain why her standards exist. She reigns from a place of inner certainty. Her no is steady, her yes is intentional, and both are respected because they come from alignment with her essence. The queen's dignity does not diminish her tenderness, it protects it. In her presence, others feel both warmth and gravity, a combination that inspires reverence. She is approachable, but never disposable, soft, but never weak. The paradox is that the calmer her boundaries, the more powerful they become. Anger may provoke resistance, but serenity leaves no room for debate. When she speaks with clarity, those around her recognize that her boundaries are not threats, but truths. This unshakable steadiness transforms how she is seen, not as someone to test, but as someone to respect. Over time, she becomes magnetic precisely because her energy is preserved for those who honor it. Ultimately, the woman who sets clear and tranquil boundaries after 50 embodies a form of irresistible confidence. She shows that respect does not come from force, but from self-possession. By protecting her energy, she preserves her softness. By saying no with serenity, she makes her yes more valuable. And in living this balance, she demonstrates a truth Jung would affirm. Dignity and gentleness are not opposites, but allies. Together, they create a presence that is both tender and commanding, a presence that makes her unforgettable. Another dimension of quiet confidence after 50 is the way sensuality transforms. It is no longer tied to spectacle, competition, or the restless need to prove attractiveness. Instead, it flows from the natural ease of a woman secure in her own body and essence. Sensuality at this stage is subtle, expressed in gestures, glances, and attitudes rather than performance. The way she carries herself, the calm with which she speaks, even the unhurried rhythm of her movements communicate a magnetism that requires no effort. She does not need to demand attention. Her self-assurance draws it naturally. Carl Jung's perspective helps illuminate this shift. He taught that individuation integrates the opposites within us, including anima and animus, receptivity and strength. In mature sensuality, these forces are no longer in conflict but balanced. The woman after 50 no longer struggles to reconcile softness with power. She embodies both seamlessly. Her energy feels whole, and this wholeness makes her presence deeply attractive. Sensuality ceases to be about proving youth and becomes about radiating integration. It is not about what is displayed, but about what is carried within. The psychological impact of this transformation is profound. Freed from the anxiety of constant comparison, she discovers a new pleasure in simply being herself. She no longer dresses, speaks, or acts to chase validation. Instead, she expresses what feels true to her, and this authenticity itself becomes alluring. There is no desperation in her gaze, only steadiness, no performance in her touch, only sincerity. What she radiates is not an attempt to win attention, but the natural beauty of being aligned with herself. Examples from daily life show how powerful this quiet sensuality can be. A woman enjoying a glass of wine alone, fully at ease with her own company, exudes a charm that draws others without words. Another laughing with friends, her eyes bright and unguarded, captivates more than any rehearsed act could. Another who meets someone's gaze with calm confidence communicates a form of desire that is felt instantly without being forced. These moments demonstrate that sensuality, when rooted in security, is not about trying, it is about being. This maturity in desire also transforms how others relate to her. Men used to superficial signals of attraction may feel disarmed because what she offers is not an invitation to conquest, but to respect. She does not chase, and she does not perform, so the dynamic shifts entirely. Those who seek only vanity cannot hold her gaze, but those who seek depth are drawn closer. Her sensuality acts as a filter, separating the shallow from the sincere without her needing to say a word. The paradox is that after 50, sensuality deepens rather than diminishes. The body may change, but the energy becomes richer, more confident, more magnetic. Because she is no longer trying to impress, her authenticity becomes irresistible. In Jungian terms, she is no longer fragmented, but integrated, and this integration shines through every movement, every smile, every pause. Her desire is no longer about being validated. It is about being expressed from wholeness. Ultimately, the sensuality of a woman over 50 is not a performance to the world, but a gift to herself. She does not need to prove, she simply radiates. Her allure is not in youth, but in maturity, not in spectacle, but in subtlety, not in competition, but in confidence. By embodying both anima and animus, softness and strength, she reflects the deepest truth of Jung's insight. When a woman becomes whole, her presence becomes magnetic, and it is this wholeness, not external display, that makes her irresistible. There is a legacy that comes with the quiet confidence of a woman after 50, a legacy that extends beyond her personal relationships and becomes a source of inspiration for others. Her posture, her choices, and her calm authority silently teach what it means to live in alignment with self-worth. Younger women, observing her presence, begin to see that aging does not equal disappearance, but expansion. They notice that dignity, once claimed, is not diminished by years, it is amplified by them. In this way, she becomes more than admired. She becomes a model of possibility. Carl Jung often emphasized the archetype of the wise woman or the sage as the culmination of individuation. This archetype carries influence not through noise or dominance, but through presence and example. The woman who has integrated her shadows, embraced her age, and stood firm in her value steps naturally into this role. She does not seek to persuade others with arguments. Her life itself becomes testimony. She embodies the paradox of attraction. She is magnetic, not because she tries to be, but because she lives in wholeness. The psychological impact of this legacy is profound. Other women who once feared growing older begin to feel liberated when they see her strength. They realize that midlife is not a decline, but a threshold, an entry into a stage of deeper authenticity. They see in her a future that is not defined by loss, but by clarity and sovereignty. By refusing to settle, by protecting her energy, by living aligned with her truth, she breaks cultural narratives and offers an alternative script, one in which age brings magnetism instead of invisibility. Daily life reflects the influence of this quiet confidence. A woman in her 50s who chooses solitude over toxic company inspires her daughter to never beg for attention. Another who pursues new passions or careers after midlife shows her friends that it is never too late to reinvent. Another who carries herself with dignity in public spaces teaches strangers that respect is not negotiated, but embodied. These examples ripple outward, creating an unspoken movement where confidence becomes contagious. The paradox is that her irresistibility after 50 has less to do with romance and more to do with authenticity. Men may admire her composure, women may draw courage from her example, and society may be forced to acknowledge what it often tries to ignore, that a woman's power does not diminish with age, it deepens. She does not compete for attention, but her very existence demands it. What she radiates cannot be reduced to beauty standards. It is the authority of self-possession. In Jungian terms, this is the full flowering of individuation, the point at which a woman has reconciled her inner world and now lives outwardly in alignment with it. She no longer divides herself between masks and reality, between expectation and truth. Her presence becomes seamless, her influence effortless. This is why she inspires. She embodies the possibility of wholeness, and wholeness itself is captivating. Ultimately, the quiet confidence of a woman after 50 becomes her greatest legacy. It tells the world that aging is not a retreat, but a coronation, not an end, but a new beginning. Her example becomes proof that the most irresistible quality is not youth, but authenticity. She inspires generations by showing that confidence does not shout. It resonates. And in that resonance, she leaves behind something greater than beauty, a path for others to follow, a reminder that dignity and self-alignment are timeless.